Hello all, we're going to get started in a couple minutes as we wait for folks to trickle in. Thank you all for joining. Again, for folks just joining us, we're going to get started in a couple moments, just waiting for folks to trickle in. Okay, let's go again and get started. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
So for everyone, my name is Oni. I'm the Managing Director at the Tsai Center for Innovative Thinking. And today I'm very honored to be in the conversation with Michael Seibel. Michael's a CEO and a partner at Y Combinator and was a co-founder and CEO at Justin TV and SocialCam. SocialCam sold to Autodesk in 2012 and under leadership of Emmett Shear, Justin TV became Twitch.tv and sold to Amazon in 2014. Before getting into startups, Michael spent a year as a finance director for a US Senate campaign and in 2005, graduated from Yale University with a BA in political science. Again, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you.
Happy to be here.
So let's just jump into it. Tell us about your early days at Justin TV. What was that like and how was your experience with that?
I think generally we had no idea what we were doing. And we were blindly confident, which I think was very helpful considering how little we understood about what we were doing. And we were very, very bad managers. We didn't care about process at all. We never wrote a spec. We never created to-do lists. We never wrote anything down. We didn't have any, I don't know. It was crazy. Like it was somewhat shocking that we got through that period. I would say on the positive side though, the team was really technical. My co-founders were Justin Kahn, Emmett Shear, and Kyle Vogt, and all three of them wrote code. And Emmett and Kyle are probably two of the top 5 software developers I've ever worked with in my life. And probably time and time again, that's what saved us. Yeah.
What would you say would be the difference between someone starting or launching a business, quote unquote, back then versus someone starting a business now? And when I say business, obviously tech.
Yeah, tech startup. So I think what's interesting is that web applications were relatively new back then. And so it was much more likely that if you were building something in the 2000s, you were the first one to try building it. And this was because kind of 2 things happened. One, kind of web didn't really become a kind of application platform until Gmail. Like Gmail was like widely considered the first like true web app. And so I think Gmail was 2004 or 2005, right around that zone. And so that was the first thing. And kind of before that, it was a bunch of static web pages that updated. The second thing was that building web products had gotten significantly cheaper in that 5-year period of time. We basically, almost all web products went open source and were just way less expensive to build. You know, we heard stories in the 90s of it taking $5 to $10 million to build a website. And, you know, over just 10 years, it went from that much money to build a website or, you know, a real web application to like people in college could build one. The result of that was you saw a lot of things that were basically happening for the first time in that era, like where you had to be a little bit less concerned about who came before. Nowadays, you know, web is a platform that's, you know, let's say 15 years old, and mobile is a platform that, let's say, is like solidly 8 years old. 2008, typically you want to call mobile, but like, let's say it took a little while for the app store and for the phones to get really good. And so nowadays, I think when founders ignore who came before them, often they're doing it at their own peril, because nowadays most people who are applying to YC are applying with ideas that have already been done before. And so now the question is not, I'm the first mover, I'm going to experiment, let's see what happens. Now the question is, what do you know that the last folks didn't? And investors want to know, because investors saw the last folks pitching. And I think that a lot of young founders miss that point. A lot of young founders kind of assume that everyone who came before them was either old or stupid. And that might be true, but the investors remember them and maybe lost money investing in those old, stupid people. And so they kind of want to know why you're different. There are some specific areas you can get into where something has changed so recently that like this enables this business now and it wouldn't have been enabled before, but that's actually pretty rare nowadays.
Yeah, that's a good point. And thank you for bringing that up. Now, Justin TV to Y Combinator, can you tell us how that path, I'm sure it wasn't, as straight as people might think. Can you tell us a bit about that path for you?
Yeah, so there were a couple points there. So Justin TV went through YC in this winter of 2007. So, we experienced the batch. It was, it built my whole group of friends. And, it's funny, Paul Graham, who founded YC, he used to have this quote during the kickoff of the program where he said, people in this program are going to be in your wedding. They're going to become friends for life. And at the time, you never think that's happening, right? College is similar. You never really think that's happening. But out of the 5 groomsmen in my wedding, 4 of them were YC founders. And the guy officiating our wedding was also a YC founder. So it takes over your life. During the interim, I mentored a couple companies. One of them was Airbnb and really enjoyed doing that. And then I did YC again in 2012 and it had gotten a lot bigger. When I did YC the first time, it was 16 companies. The next time it was 64 companies. And so it was just interesting to see how YC was able to scale and continue to help folks. And then I got a little, I kind of stumbled into this moment after SocialCam sold, where I was working at Autodesk and I was bored and I didn't really like it. And there was a new YC batch. So I just started talking to those founders and going to some dinners because, if you're an alumni that's done something, you can just kind of come back. And I was having fun and they asked me to join, at the time it was called a part-time partner, which basically meant you just did a bunch of office hours. And I really liked it. And because I'd made money with SocialCam and then later made money with Justin TV, it felt like I should give back. And it felt like YC was the perfect place to do it.
So you've described YC as one of the most fulfilling work you've ever done and with one of the best teams you've ever worked with. Can you expand a little bit on that? Why YC? What about that culture and those people that it makes it so fulfilling for you?
Well, first, there's like a for us bias effect. Like nowadays, a lot of the people who help run YC are YC alum. And so it's like being able to work on a product that like you were a user of and that really helped you, there's like a special bond there, right? You feel a special responsibility. I think the second thing is that, weirdly, it's not surprising that I come from Yale. When I was at school, it was our 300th year anniversary. There are all these celebrations and craziness. And what you don't realize when you come to the Valley is how few companies are actually built to last. And working at YC, there's this ethos that we're trying to build an institution that's going to survive for over 100 years. And it's actually fairly rare that you find an organization that's attempting to do that. Here's the honest truth. In the back of most founders' heads, they want to sell. They don't want to be Jeff Bezos. They don't want to be Bill Gates. They don't want to be in the spotlight under that pressure for multiple decades of their lives. Like they actually don't want that. I actually think you have to be a little crazy to want it. And so I think that they don't design their companies to achieve it.
Mm.
And I think that, you know, with YC, it was this opportunity to design an institution that would be around so much longer after I'd be here, helping people. That made it really, really special. And then I think the last thing, which is not really talked about enough, is that YC is a software company. And so, you know, we have a team of 10 software engineers and a designer. That team's about 15% of our total staff. And I think growing up with software in my professional life, I can't get away from it. You know, every time we do something in Y Combinator, we think, how can software help? How can software make it better? How can software deliver more value? And while you're building this institution, you're also building this actual product. Like we have a product called Bookface, which is our internal social network. It's how YC founders access to all of our resources for as long as they live, like way past the batch. And working on that is so fulfilling. So I think, you know, those are the aspects, you know, the team, the institution, the fact that I'm still doing software, you know, that's what makes it really special. And I think unlike the popular perception of investors, there is no one there to make money. There's no person there whose goal in life is to make money. And that really helps.
Yeah, I love that point. I know very early on, you know, in my entrepreneurial journey, I had a mentor who said, you should focus on creating an organization that lasts 100 years rather than is aimed to make $100 million. And, you know, ideally it would be a yes and, you know, but that's for another conversation. For you, especially think about YC, and I like this idea of institution, because I think oftentimes in startup world, people don't think about institution building as a skill to build a successful company. Can you talk more about like the skills that are needed to build an institution like YC or something that can last and have an impact, hopefully for generations?
If we kind of split it up in a couple of different parts, because I kind of see YC in two phases right now, decade one, decade two. I think in decade one, Paul Graham, the founder of YC, had a number of interesting observations and innovations. Observation one, to raise money, you need to know people. And observation two, software engineers have the ability, because the costs have come down, have the ability to conceive, launch products, and get customers by themselves. Number three, founders need support. It's emotionally draining, and investors don't offer that support. Number four, starting an interaction with an investor with a negotiation is toxic to the relationship. And so there were others, but I think that those insights were so important in the kind of creation of Y Combinator. Like Y Combinator is kind of created in response to those things. And it makes sense because Paul Graham was a software engineer who built a company in the 90s and kind of didn't like the shit he had to do.
Yeah.
And so the result, we're upfront with the terms. Like, you know what the terms are before you even apply. So you don't have to apply if you know what the terms. You can apply. You don't have to know anyone. In fact, there's no opportunity to really know us in any significant way. Like, you can't come like lobby us or anything. We fund companies in a batch, so the founders can support one another. All of those kind of core innovations, I think, were in the beginning. I think kind of the second thing was kind of developing the kind of key core pieces of advice. I think that happened over time. That didn't start at the beginning. That happened after actually iterating and seeing companies succeed and fail. And that was kind of a learning process, which established the kind of rote, do things that don't scale. It's more important to have 10 customers who love you than 100 that kind of like you. The kind of all the standard YC advice. So that was decade one. I think that decade two was, okay, how do we transition this from a family business to something that can survive when the founder is no longer here? And, you know, that was kind of the decade that I joined. And to do that, there were a couple of things. Most people don't realize that Paul and Jessica were financially supporting the organization out of their own pocketbook, like for a long time. And so how do we become financially independent? how do we create an organizational structure that is more sustainable and that can scale? And then how do we add services beyond the initial accelerator? And so, you know, for me, that's been YC's institution building process. And oftentimes I think like, I'm not going to be in the YC leadership forever. There's going to be this next group of people who come and they're going to find the next decade and they're going to add another block to the building. And, you know, one day we have an institution.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. And I really like in kind of decade two, thinking about how to create something that's bigger than just the founders or bigger than just kind of the cohort that you have now. And I know that the YC fellowships are kind of pivoting to a more open, lightweight version. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think if you think about YC, it was built in response to there being too high barriers to get involved in the startup world. And I think that those barriers were kind of constructed at a time where it was so expensive to get a startup to run that kind of people wanted credentials, or, you know, people needed a bunch of other things to trust you, because it was like, I gotta give you $10 million before I know whether anything's gonna happen. You know, when that came down, YC was like, hey, this world should not be as locked down as it is. As we've kind of developed over the years, I think one of the things that have become clear to us is that one of the biggest barriers for people accessing this world is knowledge. They don't know anything about it. They don't know what the world respects. They don't know what the rules of the world are. They don't have examples of how people have won, how people have lost. And so I think Paul started this trend really early by writing essays. And just like, by basically saying that, like, he created the culture in YC, which is really interesting culture, which is like, startup advice is not going to be made proprietary. If we're going to create startup advice to give it to our founders, we're going to give them to everybody. And he kind of started that day one. And so when you look at something like Startup School, which is kind of almost the natural realization of that, it was basically like, how do we package everything that we tell our founders, make it available for free to anyone online? And we don't care if those founders go on and do YC, go work at a startup, don't do YC and do a startup somewhere. Like, we don't care. Like, there's a little bit more of a goal here that, like, this world should be accessed by the world's talented people. And like, if we can open the door, we're fulfilling our mission.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to that point too, I think that I love the ideas of lowering the barriers to entrepreneurship. And that's something here at Tsai City we think a lot about. And we find that just the term entrepreneurship automatically creates like a narrative in people's heads where they might not see themselves as like the skinny white guy with a hoodie or Patagonia vest, right? But they might have a brilliant idea. They might have the hard skills that, you know, the hard tech skills that you express the need for, especially for founders. How are you working to kind of change the culture of entrepreneurship, of tech startups, of Silicon Valley? Is that something that YC is interested in now, maybe decade 3? How are you all navigating that?
So I think that there's kind of two cultures that often get confused. I think there's the culture of the big tech companies. And then I think there's a culture of the startup world. And I think that there are unique problems in both of them. And I'm just not an expert in the big tech world. Like, I've worked for a large tech company for exactly 18 months in my entire working career. And so I think sometimes people want to lump them together, and they're just so different and so unique. Because if you think about the big tech world, right, like big companies like employ a lot of people. They're expected to develop people. They're expected to be like friendly places. They're not really expected to be internally kind of a cutthroat competitive environment. Like, that's not a good culture. In the startup world, it's more like sports. Like, the first thing we tell the YC founders when they come in is that, like, you know, 5 companies out of a batch of about 200, 250 companies are going to fulfill the mission of the company, build a large, successful business. The rest of you are going to fail. And you all are really talented people, but something's going to go wrong and it's not going to work. And I think that how you talk to people, how you present the opportunity in the startup world when those are the odds, is very different than how you present the opportunity when you're trying to talk about Google. And so more often than not, I reach for sports as an analogy, right? If there's a 12-person basketball team and you're the 13th best player at tryouts, you don't make the team. And I think that I want to set this foundation. And it was interesting because I was actually talking to the Yale's an investor of ours. I was actually talking to the management, the team that invests in us earlier today. And I kind of want to set the foundation for founders very early that this is a somewhat brutal world you're opting into, and it's not designed to help you fulfill your dream or your potential. It's designed to help investors make money. And like, if you learn how to navigate that world, you can use that money to change the world. But that world is not like a university. It's not like a school. It's not set up to help you. To me, what I've had to do and what I've really tried to do is explain to founders from all different backgrounds, especially underrepresented founders, how to navigate that world. How they're going to be stereotyped, how to defeat those stereotypes, and what are the underlying things you have to accomplish so that people have to ignore the way you look because your business is too good. But I think the downside and the unfortunate side is that this world has many, many victims. I can't promise, if you work hard in high school and get good grades, you can expect to get into a college. If you work hard at Yale and get amazing grades, like you can expect to maybe get into a good law school. If you get to a good law school, you can expect to get a job at a lawyer. Every one of the analogous steps in startups, you should expect failure because most people fail. And so that's, I think, hard for people. Most people don't go into careers like that. Most people would never tell people to go into careers like that, right? Nobody would go into a high school and say, everyone's trying to be a performer, a musician. And like, no, those careers are freaking cutthroat. And so oftentimes I find myself talking to people saying, this is not the new cool thing. This is not like finance in the 2000s. Like, no, if you're doing this because you're not a little crazy, you should find another career. If you're a little crazy, I'm happy to help you, but like you better enjoy the ride because I cannot guarantee any outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that people can get into kind of the entrepreneurship / tech startup, or actually what happens when you face someone who you feel like is getting into the entrepreneurship / tech startup world for all the wrong reasons? I consider the right reasons. Yeah.
We have a name for it. We call it scenester. And we hate scenesters. Scenesters are the kinds of people who they want to be part of the tech startup scene, rub elbows with people they perceive to be cool, have the trappings of a good startup, like, a nice office and hire people and da-da-da-da. But when it comes down to actually getting the hard work done, they shy away from that. And usually it's not because they're bad people. More often than not, it's because there was some mismatch of expectations. Either they kind of chose a problem they didn't really care about, or they're doing the startup as like a career stepping stone. I think a startup would be good on my resume because I want to be an investor. It'd be good on my resume because I want to get an acqui-hire. Right? They're doing this kind of stepping stone thing. And it's like, what's sad is that in other careers, that works just fine. Right? You go become a clerk if you want to be a better lawyer. That's fine, right? In this career, whatever you have, someone wants to take away from you. Like in this career, like there aren't 100 Googles, there's one. And so if you're not hard charging, someone's going to take whatever you have away from you. And it's so sad because on TechCrunch and on all the tech press, you read all the funding announcements. You don't read any death announcements.
Yeah.
I think TechCrunch every week should announce, here are the top 100 companies who died this week who raised more than $1 million. Just so you actually get to feel the odds better. It's really hard to feel those odds.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's there's very much of a fail fast mentality, but even in articulating those failures, they're always spun as, and then I leveraged that into doing this instead of like, no, I just took that on the chin and it effing sucked. And I think having more of those honest conversations can be important for folks to know that this is not for the faint of heart. Matter of fact, this is really not for any heart. Like I don't think anyone is built to be an entrepreneur. You kind of come in this, you're passionate about something, you fall into it, you get beat up until you either leave or you become successful.
Well, that's why sometimes I like to describe it as a mental illness. Like, I think something is like, I think good founders, there's something a little off. There's like something a little off, right? Like let me say this another way. This isn't a healthy life. Not healthy. And like, there are things you can do to make it healthier, but it's not healthy. You're going to have to give up some of yourself to build one of these things, and something that you're not going to get back, whether it's time, energy, health, family. You're going to have to make some sacrifices.
So I love the way you kind of honor the history of YC, kind of Thicket 1, Thicket 2, going to the founders and their ethos of it. And again, you fulfilling work, fulfilling team, all those things. What would be your top critiques of YC currently?
I think there's two critiques that I see. One is that I think internally YC still sees itself as an underdog, which is really weird, but we do. And therefore, I don't think we understand how much influence we have on the whole startup community right now. And I'm not sure that we exercise that influence as well as we could. I don't even think we're used to having it. And so I think we're very out of practice in terms of exercising and using it. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is that, unfortunately, YC's popularity has made it, I think the perception of it is too elite. You know, someone was asking me a couple of weeks ago, is like, my goal is not to create an Ivy League institution. Like, if I were to say what the goal is, it's a lot closer to like the University of California system that wants to educate a lot of people versus a specialized credential that you can use to say that you're better than someone else. Because it's like, most YC graduates fail, right? Like, how can you be like, you're better than someone else? Your startup failed, their startup failed. Like, and so I think that really good founders don't apply because they think it's too hard to get in, or they get kind of tripped up by the application process, or they get tripped up by like what people perceive to be the secret process of getting into YC and the having to know people and network. And I think we have to fight harder to kind of keep the idea that, like, if you have a technically talented team and you're making progress, you have just as good a shot at getting in as anyone else. And I think that it's hard as we get more popular to say that. You know, there's like pre-accelerators. It's like, when we did YC, we had nothing. Like, I don't know how much less you could have. Like, why would you need a pre-accelerator to do an accelerator? We have to kind of fight that elite thing. And it's interesting because I think in some ways we get critiqued on both sides. I think we get critiqued that YC is too elite, and we get critiqued that YC is scaling. And it's kind of like, oh, where do you want to go here? Like, you know, do you want this to be this like crazy credential that doesn't really matter? Because like your success is very measurable in the startup world, or do you want this to be something that really does give more people an opportunity and try to solve more problems in the world as a result? Like, you can't have it both ways. Yeah.
What do you think that misalignment stems from? It's just, you know, having some unicorns come through and then people say, I can't be that? Or because anytime I hear you talk about YC, it's always so different from what I perceive YC to be. You know, it's like this egalitarian, like, if you're about that life, step up to the plate and we're going to kind of like hone you to be a championship, or like you're just going to fall off, and either one is okay, but at least be a part of a cohort to support you. Where it's like, my impression of YC is just like, you get like, almost like knighted when you come in. There's like a Patagonia chariot, you know, that like there's all these other things that I just honestly thought was the YC culture.
Well, I want to be clear. There is a Patagonia chariot. That does.
My application is coming in. 2020 winter batch.
Yeah. You know what? I think there are a couple things. One, I think that inadvertently we've become a very, very large brand. And I think that people want to kind of take their perception of other large dominant brands and apply it to us, right? Like, it's hard to get a job as a Google engineer. You have to be elite, right? And they kind of want to take that same kind of thing and apply it to us. Oh, you can't get into YC unless you already have $100,000 in revenue or something like that, right? You know, they try to kind of make those parallels that don't really apply. I think the second thing is marketing. YC isn't good for a lot of investors. I mean, like, I just gotta be like frank, right? When we started, we raised money out of YC in 2007 at a $3.5 million valuation. That was our valuation. We raised our seed round. We raised a little under $200,000. We debated with Paul on whether we should raise at 3 or 3.5. He told us 3.5 was too aggressive. We should be at 3, right? So that was YC in 2007. Today, founders raise at between $10 and $20 million valuations. And then we have companies that raise at 40, 60. We have raises companies do Series A's out of YC, right? A couple, not a lot, but like there are these outliers. There's something crazy. And if you think about it, all of that multiple between the 3 and the 10, where did that come from? That came out of investors, right? Like early stage investors would have gotten that 3X and they don't get it anymore. And the reason why they would have gotten it is because back in the day, it was an inefficient market. Back in the day, you only knew one early stage investor or 2 early stage investors. If they offered you money, you had to say yes. Now you've got this auction with 2,000 investors. Now we get a more efficient price. And so I think that there are a lot of investors who don't like that. I mean, and I don't blame them. It hurt their returns, right? On one hand, you say it helps their returns because we filter 15,000 applicants. 15,000 companies apply every 6 months. We filter it down to 200. So like we do a lot of work for the investor. On the other hand, we also, valuations are 3X higher, 2X higher, 50% higher. So I think that a lot of the negative perception from YC is often stoked by members of the investment community that would rather a company not do YC. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. So I think it's a big thing. There are others, but I think that's the group that kind of has a lot of incentive to push people away from YC.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the investor landscape in general? I think from you know, understanding and starting your own business to seeing YC and kind of seeing it from a more of a systems level and seeing, it seems like everyone, even coming out of high school, has a VC firm, right?
Yeah.
How has that changed things? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's sustainable, but I think that as founders, you should take advantage of it. I think here's the interesting thing, right? Like, what's weird is because there's been an explosion of money into early stage investing. If you fit a certain set of patterns, you can get access to that money. And I think it's important to talk about what those patterns are, right? So one, if you're trying to access, one of the patterns is where you're raising the money. And I think people don't understand this like at all. Like the fundraising environment with West Coast investors and the fundraising environment everywhere else in the globe is 2 different things. And there's a very specific reason why. Every good West Coast investor has said no to $1 billion company. Every single one has said, you know, that $1 billion company, which would have made them personally, I don't know, 20 to 100 million. Some would have made billionaires. Every single West Coast investor of any note has said no to multiple of them. So when you walk in the room, even though they might treat you like shit, because, you know, that's the power dynamic, in the back of their head, they're thinking, once there was a person who walked in the room and I didn't invest in them and I lost a whole bunch of money. So I gotta be a little more careful, right? In almost every other startup environment, those people are very rare. In the West Coast environment, they're everywhere. So that's the first kind of pattern. Where are you raising the money? The second is, are you technical? or do you have technical people on your team? The Valley believes that software is eating the world. You've heard the slogan time and time again. And there are a lot of reasons to believe that being technical or having a really strong technical team is a core competitive advantage, especially in this world today when so many startups are getting funded. How are you going to compete? You got to assume there are going to be 10 people doing your same idea. How are you going to compete if you're not technical and the other team is? How do you match up? Because being technical is really important. And I think the third pattern, which is something that a lot of founders screw up, is the ability to create FOMO. I think a lot of founders want their investor to fall in love with them, want their investor to be their parent, their mentor, their mom, the person who wipes their ass, like their teacher. That's not the role. When you want that from your investor, you're immediately removing FOMO, right? The way you create FOMO is with the demonstrating that this startup will happen regardless of whether you write a check. I don't need a mom. I don't need a mentor. I don't need someone to wipe my ass. We're building it. We're launching it. You can get on the train now at this price. We can get on the train a couple stops down at a higher price. But either way, this is happening. And I think that founders don't really understand that. Like they kind of are weirdly told that weirdly is the wrong way. Investors market themselves as we're here to help you. We're going to be your teachers, your mentors, wipe your ass, right? Because they want you to come to them. But at the end of the day, that's not their job. Their job is to write checks and make returns. And so I think that if you fit those three patterns, money is widely available. If you don't, you're going to feel like you're getting punched in the face every time you pitch. Constantly. And like, I think those are three things that most people can control.
Yeah, that's a good point. Talking about that too, and kind of staying on that subject, I'm interested in knowing what are some common and avoidable mistakes you see from early founders, whether they're going for investment or just building their brands and businesses in general.
There's one that I like to say, which is a lot of early stage founders will hold the problem really loosely and hold the solution really tight. So they won't really understand the problem they're solving really well. Oftentimes they seek problems they don't understand as well because they can convince themselves they can solve them. And they tell themselves a story that everyone trying to solve that problem is an idiot and I know the right answer. But when they actually look at the problems in their lives, they're like, oh no, I don't know how to fix that. I'm not even going to try. I know how complicated that is, right? So that's kind of one thing. The second thing is that like once they've come up with the solution, they have this just fucking stupid belief that their solution's correct. That like the thing they came up with after having very little experience is correct. And so they kind of will build that solution even as they see their arms and legs being chopped off, even as they're presented with massive amounts of evidence the solution isn't working. And the right way of thinking about this is hold the problem tight and the solution loose. Be willing to get rid of the solution constantly. Be willing to change the solution, make it unrecognizable. It's kind of like when people hire, they kind of instinctively know that they're new at hiring, yet they assume that they're going to be good at it. And like, you know, same thing. I tell the founders, like, let's just say you're a great hirer. That means that 50% of the people you hire don't work out. Are you ready to fire 50% of the people you hire? Because if you're a great hirer, you're firing 1 out of 2. If you're a mediocre hirer, Mr. 23-year-old, Mrs. 23-year-old early startup founder, you better be ready to fire more people. Otherwise, you're going to collect a bunch of people who aren't good. Not because they're bad, because you are bad.
Yeah.
And so these are the types of mistakes that I see. And then the last one's what I mentioned earlier, which is lack of research. And I made this, let's be clear, every mistake that I'm talking about, I don't want to sound holier than thou. Every single fucking mistake I'm talking about, I made multiple times over years. So I'm just sharing a list of my personal screw-ups, my screw-up resume. The last one is this idea of doing research. whether it's researching your competition, researching the people who came before you who died, talking to the founders or employees at those companies, or researching your investors to actually find the people who might be interested in your space. I think a lot of founders don't want to do research, almost like it's anti the entrepreneurial spirit, right? It's like, oh, entrepreneurs, they just fucking go forward, just drive, right? Research sounds like leaning back and going to the library. That's not, I don't do that. I move forward. And it's like, I always think, imagine your mystical competitor who's doing all the things that you aren't, who's doing all the things you know you should do, but you're not doing. They're going to beat you. Are you going to let them beat you? And like, it's funny because once again, it's a little bit like sports, right? How many hours are you going to spend in the gym versus how many hours is the other person going to spend in the gym? And more often than not, it's the hard work that separates people. It's not the genius idea.
Yep.
So anyways, that's been my experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. And thanks for raising that. And I love this idea of holding on to the problem, but not focusing, like really caring less about the solution. Your solution that you're excited about is whichever one that best serves the problem, and not the one that you like got at the bar with a couple of buddies the night before and then try to find a problem to attach it to.
Yes. So we have a phrase for that: solution in search of a problem. We actually mark applications when we read that.
Oh, I might need to get like the YC kind of like code book, because I like the terms that you're throwing around. But and previously when you provided kind of like a YC 101 for Yale students and also through office hours, I love the way you articulated this idea of like, I don't care what problem you're working on. Like YC doesn't care about the problem. It like, what problem are you passionate about? It's like, don't choose AI because AI is like trending on Google search. Like choose AI because you're excited about AI, And like, is that the same energy that you have around that? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, you have to, right? Like, part of my job at YC is I help run a group with this batch. It was 4 group partners. We were in a group of 60 companies. They all do different stuff. I don't know, like, there are some companies building COVID tests. There are a couple of companies trying to cure cancer. There were companies that were building all different types of B2B software, enterprise software, consumer stuff. And so if I have to be into the idea to work with the startup, I'm going to fail at my job. Like, I'm into the founder's enthusiasm. And what's so fun about my job is that like, I just get to learn about all this stuff. And, I get to learn, because I think that's the interesting thing about YC founders. Like, they're capable people. They might not win, right? Their startup might not win, but they're smart, capable people. And so being around those kinds of people and learning from them is so much fun. But God forbid I inserted my thesis, right? It's kind of like my uneducated thesis about bio. Oh, well, we should only fund companies like this, right? It's like, what do I know? No, that's not the, and by the way, I think universities model that really well. Like, they don't give a shit like good universities don't care what you're going to study when they accept you. They're like, do your own thing.
Yeah. That's a good point. Do you think that, are there issues that you would be excited about people coming to YC with that you haven't seen previously?
One of the trends that happened kind of post 2016, kind of post the Obama second term and Trump getting elected, one of the trends that started happening amongst YC applicants was people feeling that the government wasn't going to solve important problems. They couldn't just wait and expect the government to solve important problems. So we started seeing a number of companies saying, this is an important problem that impacts me and I want to try to solve it. And I want to try to build a business to solve it. I think personally, I find those most exciting. Because, I'm a poli-sci guy and like, I was in love with the government for a long time. And I think that businesses with a good mission and a good culture can make a lot of improvements in the world. And so I'm really excited when I see founders like that. And, you know, interestingly, and it's kind of a statement on how good we have it in America without us realizing it, is that disproportionately those founders are international. Disproportionately, those founders, you know, I remember one founder who applied from Colombia, and he said to me, I grew up in Colombia during the bombings when Pablo Escobar was bombing, doing terrorist bombings in the city. You're saying this startup stuff's hard. I've done hard. Like, that doesn't intimidate me. And a lot of international founders have this feeling like tech is what's going to allow us to leapfrog from an emerging market company to an emerged market company. And I want to be part of that. And I think that in America, sometimes we don't realize how good we have it. Of course, there are a lot of problems, but we don't realize sometimes how good we have it compared to a lot of other founders. You know, we fund a lot of founders, for example, from Nigeria. And the first batch that I worked with a Nigerian founder, they come out to the Bay Area for the batch and they told me, Michael, we don't want to go home. We want to stay here. And I'm like, you're building a company for Nigeria. Like, it's like all your customers are there. All the business customers are there. Everyone's there. What are you talking about? Like, it's far away. Like, the time zones are, why would you stay here? And he's like, you don't understand. Like, you've never lived in Lagos. And I was like, I understand, but you better get your ass on a plane and go back to Lagos. Yeah. They went back to Lagos. I went and visited them a year or two later. And I was like, okay, I understand. Hard to find good housing, public transportation's hard, a lot of traffic, power's going in and out. Politics is weird. Like, you know, I understand why you liked living in a house in a suburb, getting work done. I get it now. And so I see a lot of it from the international founders, but I also see a lot of it from US founders too. And I think that's what kind of gets my core, you know, really going.
That's good. So we have about 10 minutes left, and I want to dig into a bit more personal questions to learn a little bit more about you. I think, you know, you're the first Black partner at YC and the first Black board member at Reddit. Do you feel like these are accomplishments? Do you give any credence to these? How do you think about your role in the way race plays for you as you're navigating these spaces?
I think that right or wrong, people feel more comfortable going after a goal if they see someone who looks like them who's accomplished it. And so I think it's important that I do these things because I think it's important for people who are underrepresented to know that there's someone who's done it before so they can do it. And also to know that, like, I can't make your company happen, but like I can help. There's someone to like stand on the shoulders of. And so I think that's really important. But at the same time, I think there's something a little bit more insidious going on when it comes to entrepreneurship. I think that underrepresented communities in general have to be far more entrepreneurial. It's kind of how they build wealth, how they survive. And I think that what's happened is there's been a transition in the small business world in America that's not taught and not explained. I think small businesses, what people might perceive is overnight shifted from being mom and pop physical to online. You know, the barber shop of 25 years ago is the Airbnb host of today. And I think that that's not well understood. So I think that what's happening and what creates a lot of conflict is that the startup tech world is getting so much attention and we're creating so much attention that I think we are drawing in all entrepreneurship. At the same time, the traditional paths for making a small business are degrading. The traditional funding for small businesses, banks, gone. And so you have all these people caught in the crossfire because, like, you know, what I'm talking about, the chances of building a multi-billion-dollar company, that's way harder than being a successful Airbnb host. Like, I'm not saying that's not hard, but like it's way harder, right? And if you're a successful Airbnb host, you can pay your rent, you can have kids, you can send them to college. If you do a good job, like you can actually live a really good life. And so I think that nothing has, all of these tech platforms basically enable people to create small business online, but there's this disconnect where the communication isn't happening. You know, one of the things that I've been kind of randomly musing about was that we should at YC create a startup school for online businesses, for people who
Yeah,
want to make $100,000 a year using some other platform to build an online business where they don't have to code, they don't have to build something new. Like there's a whole different set of skills. And I don't think that exists. And I think that as a result, there are a bunch of people who are entrepreneurial, who don't really want to build the next Google, who come to the Valley and get very disappointed. And that sucks. That sucks.
yeah,
We got to fix
yeah.
that.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I second that thought. I mean, it's been very interesting, you know, seeing a lot of people more interested in buying products from Black-owned businesses, where oftentimes entrepreneurs just don't have the infrastructure to meet those demands, right? Their SEOs are where they need to be, their websites are archaic at best, but they have the skills, the product is amazing, but they just don't have the infrastructure that can allow them to be successful. And because people don't look at, you know, a local female Black-owned candle maker as being innovative, but she can easily do 6 figures a month easily with the scents she's putting out, but she doesn't have the infrastructure for it to be successful, she's not going to be in the incubators or accelerators that she deserves to be in.
Well, let's be clear. Someone needs to build a product for her.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, the base products exist, right? Shopify exists. Like all of the things you need to kind of do warehousing without running a warehouse, that all exists. The whole shipping infrastructure, that exists. The ability to advertise on Facebook, that exists, right? Like, so all the tools are there, but well, one, our schools are not teaching us how to do it.
Yeah.
There aren't any companies that seem to be really good at teaching us how to do it. Shopify can teach you how to use Shopify, but like it doesn't really, can't teach you the whole thing, right?
Yep.
And so this knowledge gets caught in these specialized pockets, and the people who can get it, they do really well. And those are like unsung people. They're not appearing in TechCrunch and da-da-da-da. They're just making money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I agree. Like that's, if someone figures that out, like it'll happen. Someone on this call maybe should do it.
Yeah, agreed. Would love to see that application. Another thing, so personally, where do you, I mean, you've done so much in your career, and I think there's like a beautiful opportunity for you to do more on the board of Reddit and now kind of in the driver's seat of Y Combinator. Personally, where do you feel like you need to grow? Like whether it's professionally or like where do you feel like you want to start honing your skills to be more effective in whatever areas you're excited about?
So it was funny. I was having a conversation with Justin Kahn, my old co-founder, maybe about a year ago. And he said something really interesting. He said that he's got a very viral personality. Whatever he does, it's very easy for him to pull his friends into it, good or bad. And he started to realize how his actions kind of reverberated around our friend group. And he started saying, I want to be purposeful about that. I want to try to develop good habits that my friends are influenced to get to. And I thought that was really smart. And so one of the things that he does is he uses a habit tracking app, and he kind of ascribes to this book called Atomic Habits. And it's basically like a tool for self-improvement. And he taught me about it, and he told me to read the book, and kind of, he actually developed his own habit tracking app that he shared with me. In the process of going through this, I realized that like all of the things, all of the pressures that have caused me to grow and learn have been external, not internal. It's like, learn or your startup dies. Okay, I'll learn. Learn or you won't get into a good college. Okay, I'll learn. Like learn or YC, something breaks in YC. Okay, I'll learn. But it's never really been internal. And I realized that like we're never taught how to set a goal for ourselves and accomplish it. Like, it's just never taught. And so this book gave me a framework to kind of figure it out. And that's really where I've been investing a lot of the past little less than a year of my life. And so for me, the first area has been around health. Like, I'm trying to lose weight. I've lost about 50 pounds doing this. I got to lose a lot more. But like, it's been like, hey, let me take control of this part of my life. And I think that the cool thing about the book, it's a really long book. It's one of those books that really should be a blog post and it's a whole book. But one of the cool things about the book is that I think I come in with the assumption that things that are hard for me come easy to other people. And so I have a natural excuse if I can't do something. Oh, it comes harder for me. It's easy for that person. And the one thing this book says is that hard things are hard for everyone. Effective people get good at doing hard things. And I was like, okay, so you're saying it's a level playing field. So you're saying like, okay, like if it's a fair playing field, I'll play. All right, let's see where this goes. And I think that's been a really big motivator in my life. And so, I use a habit tracking app now. I set really small and easy to accomplish habits, like stupidly easy, to the point where people would be like, oh, that's stupid. Like, my first habit was to work out 2 minutes a day. It's like, anyone can do that, right? Like, it's literally like you could do anything for 2 minutes a day, right? Another one of my first other habits was when I get behind an email, like mentally, I'm frustrated. So it was to do 2 minutes of email in the morning and 2 minutes email in the evening. And so slowly but surely with these habits, I kind of started working out the things that kind of caused me frustration in my life. And it's not perfect, but it's a way better tool than I've ever had before. So, I think that's where I'm investing a lot of my personal time right now.
That's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. What was the name of that book again? Can you just say that one?
It's called Atomic Habits.
Great, Atomic Habits. Thank you so much. And then last question, and I think this is more of a statement from me than like a really overarching question. Why does VC Twitter suck so badly?
VCs wouldn't tweet if prospective founders didn't consume those tweets. So you have to think about it this way. As a VC nowadays, in almost every vertical, early, like, pre-seed, seed, Series A, VCs are becoming a commodity. So much more money has been pushed into this world. They have so much money to invest, and all their competitors have so much money to invest. And they've invested so much in being able to do value add, and their competitors have invested so much in being value add, that in effect, you're in this world where it's a commodity. Now, if you think about other commodity worlds, how do you build a successful business in a commodity world? Well, let's look at one of the best commodity worlds that's out there, soda. How do you build a big business? Advertising. That's Coca-Cola does best, right? They're selling you brown diabetes water, right? Like, gotta advertise. And so literally, that's what VC Twitter is if I can look like a thought leader, you'll take my dollar and not that other person's dollar. You'll think I'm smart and I can help you more than the other person. Hey, you can't blame people for competing in a marketplace. It is what it is. So, maybe you could do what I did. About 3 months ago, I unfollowed everyone on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
Mental health improved significantly.
I imagine. Well, Michael, with that, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate your candor and your honest conversation. I know I learned a lot, and I hope the other folks on the call learned a lot as well. Is there any final thoughts that you would like to close?
I just appreciate the invitation, and I'm just excited to see Yale get more and more into this. We're coming from behind, and so we gotta match up.
We'll do. That's what we're here to do. Michael, thank you so much again, and have a great rest of your day.
Cheers. See you later.